Hey folks, welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. I'm your host, AJ Armstrong. You can find out more about me at aaronjarmstrong.com. Coming back to you from a 3-month sabbatical where I was completely eyeballs deep in the Venture Project, which is our new co-working space and business incubator located in downtown Oshkosh, Wisconsin. That was, a hell of a story, a hell of a ride. And if you guys go on my Instagram account, Aaron Armstrong33, or you go to the_venture_project, you can find all sorts of information about different programs, seminars, and all sorts of good fun stuff that we are constantly launching here in our community. But it is also open to all of you guys at the national level as well to come follow along and check us out. So we really encourage you guys to go to my website, aaronjarmstrong.com, or go to the Venture Project Oshkosh.com to find out a little bit more about what this 7,500 square foot Art Deco inspired business incubator is looking like and all the cool, creative, fun ideas we have along with it. But today's guest, you guys are really going to like. I called this episode Reverse Aging because this is a guy that almost went into like a whole new style of life after he got younger, or after he retired. He retired as some kind of I think it's a periodontal regenerative surgeon is what he calls it, but some kind of oral surgeon. Where he retired, had his whole second career with this company called Old Guy Talks to Me, and based out of Las Vegas, where he talks with men, older men, goes through the ideas of aging and a lot of the different kind of, discussions that you have with aging, whether it's losing muscle mass, your sex drive, all these, testosterone optimization, muscle building. There's all sorts of things that happen with men as they get older. And it's just interesting to talk to him about how he's kind of, dealt with this physically and mentally in the process of aging. And you'll see that this guy is a complete trip. He is a real character. He goes by Orest the Old Guy. His company is oldguytalks.com. And nothing is off limits with Orest. It's really a fantastic conversation, no matter who you are, where you're coming from. This was a really engaging, exciting, fun, hilarious conversation. And I hope you guys seriously enjoy what we have to discuss today. So without any further ado, welcome to the show.
Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
Take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of, and what is the plan to overcome that fear, and what is the plan to enact that passion.
Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. I am your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33, or you can go to my website, aaronjarmstrong.com. Joining me from Las Vegas, the fabulous Las Vegas, is Orest the Old Guy, who's going to talk. He's the founder of oldguytalkstome.com. He is a master in all things related to how men can really crush it in their later years. But among other things, we're going to talk about kind of the deeper meaning of masculinity and lots of other aspects as how that could maybe play into your business journey or your ventures out in the world. So Orest, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to this discussion.
Yeah, this is good. I mean, it never fails to amaze me, the people that I get to meet on this podcast. Like who would have thought, here I am, 29 years old. I got a pregnant wife. So any of the listeners out there, I don't know if I formally let you guys all know, but Marissa's pregnant. She's about 5.5 months pregnant. We're expecting a little one in May. And now I'm bringing on Orest the Old Guy to talk to me about what it's like aging, what is that like as a man, getting older, and something I think about when I go to funerals, and that's about it, I feel great right now. Like my dad,
maybe I should go down to Costco and get one of those caskets that they sell down there. Do you know they sell caskets at Costco?
Do they really?
Yes, they do.
They sell everything at Costco. I can't believe they sell caskets at Costco.
And they're really good. I'm not sure how we got on this casket thing, but no, we when my mother died several years ago, she loved Costco. And we were at the funeral home. Of course, they get you there, and of course they got you in that weeping state, and you're easy prey. But somehow we said no, and then we went online and saw Costco had a casket that was about literally half the price. And it was a solid wood casket. This was not a cheap thing. Costco doesn't have, and they delivered it to the funeral home within 48 hours. And so she had her casket from Costco, which you loved. But I will caution your listeners that the one thing that it is a bitch getting that Kirkland label off a casket.
Is it like 3 times the size too? Like
no, there's no Kirkland label.
Yeah, you put 3 people right in here. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't fail. Costco never fails to amaze me. That's one of the few places that I love to recommend. I mean, I love Costco. It's one of my favorite places, especially before all the COVID stuff happened, when you just got those samples and everything. Just beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Well, here we are, and like I said, my dad's my best friend, and I get a chance to watch him age a little bit, and we work out together. But he's pushing 60 now, and he's still benching over 350, and he's really keeping it up. So I'm going to be
animal.
He's trying. He thinks he is. If he never listens to this show, he wouldn't be caught dead listening to my show. But if he was listening right now, he'd be really excited. We're talking about his bench press. When he's pushing 60.
350 is pretty damn good. I mean, that's good in your 20s. Depending on how strong you are. That's pretty impressive. I'm sure people go in the gym, kind of go look at him like, what the hell are you doing over here?
Yeah, I got to play this little sound bit for him, after this, because he's going to be really excited. We're stroking his ego today. Well, Orest, I'm glad you could make it today. You coming from Las Vegas, tell me a little bit about, your story, your background, and let's kind of dig into your, what led you into this kind of passion that you currently have.
Well, actually, this is my second career, and I started this whole podcasting thing. I used to do some Facebook Live interviews, and I had my blog, but my main job was I was a periodontal regenerative surgeon. So I did dental implants and gum surgeries for over 33 years. And about a little bit over 2 years ago, it was time for me to go. It was time for me to move on to something else. And I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in Phoenix, and that was home. And so I sold my practice. And because of my wife's business, she most of her business was up in Las Vegas area, and so we moved up to Las Vegas. And it has been the best thing that we did. Is actually being forced in a new situation has been really revitalizing your life. So it's been great. And I'm 68, and so it wasn't like I was like 66 when we moved up here. So it's not like I'm a spring chicken, but it's been a great deal. I've part of it is gotten to meet a lot of interesting people. So some of that has to do with the fact of what my wife does for a living. So we're always around.
What does your wife do?
My wife sells businesses.
Okay.
And
she's
usually,
like a broker.
Well, a little bit more than that, because brokers are usually, she's in the 5 million to 100 million range.
Sure.
And brokers are in it depends on what the definitions are, kind of scarce there. But so she sells businesses, and she does very well up here. She used to be an attorney by training. So we come up here, and so we get to meet a lot of interesting people in that regard. And then I've on my own, a lot of stuff happens in a cigar bar.
Yeah, yeah.
And lots of deals get done. You meet a lot of interesting people, and I've made some very good friends here at cigar bars, and I've become involved in a men's charitable organization. So lots of things have kind of aligned themselves nicely since I moved up here. Even though I knew no one when we moved here.
That's interesting. There was a friend of mine. We had a men's group. We used to meet and talk about all sorts of things, and he turned me on. I'm not a big, I was never a big like smoker guy, but he invited me to come to a cigar bar, and he's like showing me this cigar culture that you see in these cigar bars, because they take 3 hours to smoke most of the time. You end up sitting with these people, and you get into the deepest philosophical conversations with just random strangers you never would have met. And it's much deeper and more sophisticated than if you just went to a regular bar where you're just talking about whatever. For whatever reason, there's something about that cigar culture where you can have these great conversations. So he turned me on to that idea. And that's something that we don't have permits to be able to have a cigar bar in our co-working space we're launching, but like, that's something I want to see happen there, like that idea, because like you said, there's weird deals that happen. There's conversations that spur up. There's ideas when you're in that kind of cigar environment.
Yeah. I mean, I've been witness where I've introduced people where they're making big deals. You hear it at another table because people, you can hear it. Actually, kind of a funny story that I'll tell you because you're here and you have to listen to what I say. You can indulge me because of I'm gonna use my age as much as
I'm a guest on your show. I'm gonna tell the story.
So I've got two girls. One of them is an engineer in Boston, and the other one's finishing for last year of college in finance and biochemistry. And we were talking, and she was talking about how everyone at her job, the one that's in finance and biochem, because she had an internship that turned into a part-time job. Now she has an offer, and she was talking about how everyone would talk about golf, and we'd say, oh yeah, there's lots of deals that get made on golf courses, and I said, yeah, lots of deals also get made in cigar bars. And we've had this conversation before. And so she goes, oh yeah, is that the case? And then she looks at me, my wife's sitting next to me, and my wife gave me a pass on this previously. She said, Dad, if I had been a boy, you would have already taught me how to smoke a cigar. And since I had already taught several of her friends who happened to be male how to smoke a cigar, there was no denying that. And so a few months ago, I took my daughter while they were still open to a cigar bar for her first cigar.
And how did that experience go for her? What did you start her with? Something like, like black coffee or something, or you got a little sweeter?
No. I did not give her a sweet cigar. No, she wouldn't have. I think we smoked a Gurkha, which is what I normally smoke, and we smoked a regular cigar. They're actually pretty smooth, and so we went through the whole ritual of proper cutting of a cigar. We also went through the whole ritual of how to light a cigar etiquette and things like that. So I did a podcast with a guy about 14 things not to do in a cigar bar. And some of them are pretty amazing. That all of us have witnessed people doing that.
Like spit on the floor? Was that one of them?
No, like ask to take a drag off someone's cigar for a taste. Oh. It's not a doobie. It looks like one, but it's not.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. So it was very interesting that was kind of because, you kind of have, you got your daughter. My daughter's, she's a badass athlete. She's also very feminine in some ways, but on a basketball court, she'll trash talk you and drive by you and shoot baskets and this and that. So it was just kind of, it was an interesting phenomenon. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad that my wife said, you need to do this. Because originally she said, no, I don't want you to do that. And then we talked about it and I said, look, she's right. She's right.
Yeah. So is that kind of what spurred a lot of the interest? You're kind of, because you meet so many people, you get so many ideas at these different cigar bars. And, it's just that's such a cool culture that people haven't had the opportunity to ever check that out. Like just this, especially like a very like masculine culture, which is why it's unusual that your daughter would be like, hey, you taught me how to smoke a cigar. It just seems like something that typically men love to do and just kind of hang out and have like a nice cigar for a while. And it's just like, especially like the bar, the design, the decor, everything is just really very cool in those kinds of places. And you're right, deals get made. Is that what spurred you into some of the second career that you kind of launched?
Well, that way it wasn't really the cigar bar, because I've been smoking cigars for ages. But the second career is I've always had this kind of need to create, to perform. And so one of the ways that I do that satisfies that artistic need is by doing podcasts and interviewing people and being entertaining. Hopefully I'm entertaining. Hopefully I make people
So far,
laugh.
so good. So far, so good.
If you don't laugh at my shit, you're there's something wrong with you.
All my best friends, I always joke with my wife, are people that laugh at my jokes. That's all you got to do to be friends with. You just laugh at my jokes.
And so and plus the other thing is that I am by nature and always have been an attention whore.
Yeah.
And this is what better place, this is one of the best places to get attention is be on podcasts or have your own podcast show. And it satisfies that need.
Yeah.
That lust.
Yeah. That lust for attention. That's always something you always see, especially like that actor animated personality a lot of times too. It's always like those types of people tend to thrive on the spotlight. And that's why it's always good to get them in front of a camera or a microphone, because man, can they perform. You're a great performer too. Do you do stuff like outside of podcasting, like speaking or entertaining stuff?
I'd like to get speaking engagements. I don't get as many of them as I'd like, because I'm really kind of just starting in this whole area.
Sure.
One of my targets for this year is to prepare a TED Talk.
Ooh.
And and also to write a book. And it's the same amount of research for both. To do that. And but it's I did like 3 or 4 stints as stand-up comedy, which really if you want to learn how to speak, go take a comedy class and learn how to do stand-up comedy. It really it is the hardest damn thing, especially if no one's laughing at your jokes. 5 minutes can seem like an eternity. But going back to this whole thing, a lot of the stuff that I do on my podcast is born out of self-interest. When you look at the topics that I cover, they're born out of self-interest, either out of a need, a physical want, an emotional want, or sometimes just plain debauchery. Because I talk about cigars, I talk about scotch in my program and all sorts of stuff. But a lot of it is that. I think it's kind of a sad thing that you see men, especially as they get older, they give up on the concept of being a better man.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of different ways. And I'm not going to tell you that like every day I hit it out of the ballpark or whatever, or blah, blah, blah. But the general focus of my life is being a better man every day. And that's being a better man and being a better husband, a better father, a leader, and all in all, just kind of being out there in the world and working towards a better version of yourself for tomorrow than you are today.
Yeah, because I'm at that age now where like it's my father's generation, my like in-laws, they're all kind of in this facing retirement piece, and it seems like with a lot of men, when they go through this idea of retirement, it's just kind of like we're done. We're done and we've given up. And it's like now your kids are out of the house, like they're going to do what they're going to do. They have their own personality or whatever. And there's not like this itch to achieve anymore. There's not this like itch to improve. And so, seeing like what you're kind of doing, it's really a unique perspective, because I feel like people should think about that. Like, what is the second wind of life going to look like for you? Like, what is that next level going to be? Why not keep improving? Because you can only go fishing and golfing for so long. And,
oh God, heaven forbid. Yeah.
But it's like, that's kind of this idea. It's just like, I always didn't, I don't like this idea of retirement in a lot of ways. Now given I'm young, but it just seems like a point in time where you can now mark to where I can start doing what I want to do. That's how I think of a lot of people who do that. And, I see a lot of people that just give up when they're done. Like, it's like, I've got nothing left. And they kind of go one of two ways. They either go totally down with just like their hobbies, or they're just like kind of unhappy and unpleasant for the next 35 years and they die.
Yeah. So I'm going to, I need to put this disclaimer. I'm not a physician. Consult with the appropriate professional. Do not start anything until you talk to them and all that other stuff that my IP lawyer likes me to say. So this is the scoop. This is what I'm a firm believer in, and that I've been on. I've been on testosterone for over 23 years, coming to 24. Testosterone optimization. I'm a firm believer on it. I've been off it. I've been on it, and I can tell you when I get off of it that there's people think it's about sex, but it's not. It's about your mental attitude, your acuity, maintaining muscle mass, your drive, and your overall attitude. That when you start having depleted numbers, that those all go downhill in a very dramatic fashion. And so that's why you see a lot of things happening to men in their 40s and 50s and 60s, where they start going, start doing that. And I have been, I was fortunate enough to run some people many years ago, 23, 24 years ago, that kind of put me on this path. And I had lots of discussions with my physicians and this and that. They all like, oh, you're going to get this. This is going to go bad. This is going to. I'm going like, I'm not seeing this. And so now it's becoming much more commonplace. So there's some problems with that. But I'm a great believer in that will restore a lot of your drive. I think adequate. And I'm going to say adequate optimization is probably one of the best antidepressants that you can ever have.
What do you mean by optimization? What is that? Supplementing? Is it like supplementing with? So you take actual shots.
Yeah.
Is there like natural ways to increase it too that are effective or that work, or is it mostly the supplementation?
It's a supplementation because there's plenty of things out there that do it, but will they do it in a significant amount of way to make it difference? No. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Is that and I'm not going to get into my numbers specifically, but I just know that where I go down to if I'm not supplemented, I feel miserable. It's really noticeable, and I have other friends who've been on it, and then when they get off of it for a while or for whatever reasons, we become very, very miserable as human beings, very lethargic, don't have any life in us and everything else. So it's the thing that makes a man a man.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And the challenge is, and I don't, that this is a problem with masculinity in the 21st century. Because there's several studies, one of them, the biggest one is called the Male Normative Aging Study, that shows a generational decline of testosterone levels in men over the last 30, 40 years.
Why is that?
Well, a lot of it has to do with lots of compounds in the environment, what's called endocrine disrupting compounds, the fertilizers that's used, the hormones that are used in the food, everything in chemicals, the plastics, all sorts of stuff that challenge your endocrine system. And
Sure.
there's a whole number of things that are going on physiologically with men, where I'm actually running into men your age that are miserable and have actually, it was very interesting. I had a conversation with a man he was probably about your age, firemen, which are all pretty buff guys and everything else. And we talked about, because we had kind of similar discussion, and he told, he said, you have no idea how many people are on this. And his own story was that he was really negative. He was and his levels were incredibly low. And he found a doctor to give him adequate treatment. And so he's much happier, much more. His wife notices a difference in terms of his attitude, his personality, and his demeanor. And so because of these things, there's a man 60 20 years ago has about 15% more testosterone than a man 60 today.
How much did you say?
15%.
15%.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's decreasing, and these things are showing up not just in testosterone levels, but there's another study out of Israel, of Hebrew University in Israel, that they looked at like 1,000 studies, and it took them about 5 years to write this paper. And the other thing that most people don't know is that in the last 30 years, sperm levels in men have dropped by 50% in the industrialized world. And
most of this is in, you think, maybe environmental and
a lot of it
diet.
is environmental. Yeah, a lot of diet. So some of it may be societal, but most of it's going to be an environmental diet. But their statement is that, extrapolating the data, that by 2050, most men in the industrialized world will be infertile.
Jeez.
Now, that's just around the corner.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is. And no one's, it's even to the point where there's a few private equity groups that are investing in sperm banks. They're basically creating it to deal with this thing. Because I've interviewed a gynecologist, and she was talking about her fertility practice. And one of the things when we were talking about this, and she said, yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I've noticed that the percentage of where the issue is with the man and not the woman is going up in her fertility practice. So it's something that's kind of like on the radar, but not, that no one really talks about.
Well, how do you even begin to solve that problem? I mean, yeah, I think that there's this idea of supplementing for people who are below what their natural ability might be or whatever. Yeah. But how do you solve the root cause of that? Like, how do you even start to do that?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I mean, you can't. I mean, there's plastics everywhere.
Even like this laptop that I'm, zooming you on.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember when we were in high school, we'd always joke, we'd call it the sterilizer. We were just like, but the electricity in this could make lower your sperm count. I mean, who knows how much, if that's just truth.
Yeah. There's certain amount of, there's certain amounts when you start looking at some of the things, I'm sure there's a certain level of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. And
right.
I've got some friends that have really tight tinfoil hats.
Right.
But these are pretty, the studies actually, the one study here is, oh gosh, I'm looking at it. I mean, it comes out of the American Physiological Society, which is that's not like that's a major organization. It's not like some two Joe Schmoes that got together and write a paper that no one believes in. It's out of their physiological reviews. So it's significant. It's out there. It's not like it's some sort of bizarre stuff that I'm talking about. It is bizarre, but it's pretty scientifically accepted at this point.
Yeah, that's really an interesting idea, because I don't know, like I make observations, I should say, in culture, where I definitely feel like, you look at what men did in World War II versus what men do now, and it's just like, come on, like it's almost like there's this total change in culture where men aren't as driven, they're not as intense, they're not as strong-willed, they're not as disciplined, and that's just, I don't have data or studies to back that up. I just know what I've looked at and what I read, and it just seems intuitively you can draw on a lot of these different conclusions, and it's like, it makes sense if you look at it from a physiological standpoint, like what's going on with the actual hormones within them.
There's all, and some of it's also social. I don't know. I'm kind of, because this is kind of what I'm going to be talking about. But there's a book it's called A War Against Boys, and the author's name is Christina Hoff Sommers. She's, by the way, hated on every college campus. She gets basically booed off, or she doesn't even bother trying to go to college. Speak on college campuses anymore. But it talks about a lot of the problems that males have now at this point in time. Most college graduates are women. Young women out salaries are higher than young men's now when they come out of college. There's just young men are more likely to be in jail. They're more likely to really not pursue any sort of education, be it university or even technical.
Yep.
And so it's a common problem in a lot of different areas. So there is a problem with masculinity that's going on that no one talks about, except they want to talk about masculine toxicity.
Yeah,
You
yeah, and that's the problem. It's almost like they talk about toxic masculinity in a lot of ways, and they don't talk about masculinity itself. Like there's this idea of a beast, right? It was kind of this idea I've thought about for a while. It's there's just a barbaric man, like I used to know this, like the people that are just aggressive, they're rude, they're disrespectful, they're sexually deviant, all these types of things. But then there's this idea of the polished man, and that's the gentleman. That was the idea of the gentle man, right? It's this way of being polished, being a controlled beast, but having this power, this discipline, but respect. And we've seen both of those labeled as bad things now with pop culture. And there's I think everybody would agree that if you're just going to be like a Viking that just rapes and pillages, that's obviously not good for society. But then there's this idea of the gentleman. It's this controlled beast, this tame beast that's still strong, that's still assertive, that's still a man, and that's masculinity.
And then there's the whole concept of the beta male. It's very interesting that you talk toxic masculinity or masculine toxicity. I think there's so many little variants that those are actually supposedly, I think, two different terms. But if somebody's like that, there's actually a generic term for that, and it's called asshole.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of like I think that's actually the other term is actually much more to how should I say, highfalutin, educational kind of got a university twinge. No, the guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's also a lot of bitches out there too. And and women will tell you that that's true too. It's not just the guys. And so there, the toxic personalities are not just limited to XY
gender.
chromosome.
Right.
There's plenty to go around, and I've seen it, and in a business situation, a lot of women will tell you that the people that are most vicious to them are other women.
Mm-hmm. My mom said that for years when she used to work in corporate environments.
So this is not, people are pretending that stuff doesn't end. I was on a call the other day, and it was like somebody was sitting there like, "Oh, we need to retrain our men." And I couldn't, I don't type fast enough. But I wish I could have gotten on there in person. Like, who in the hell are you to be training men? And how do you, what makes you think that you have the all-knowing knowledge about what it means to be a man? You don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Especially in this time. I mean, I think so. It's a hard time for a young man to be a man for a number of reasons, including all sorts of stuff being accused sometimes of stuff that didn't happen and this and that. And and I'm not as the father of two daughters, I'm not excusing anyone who does that, who's violent or rapes someone or anything like that. I think it's a horrible crime. I think it's a horrible thing to do for somebody to do. But there's also this thing of kind of the victim culture, and the victim culture extends into so many different areas because there's a certain amount of celebrity because of the attention that you get when you can be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
It's people feel sorry for you or whatever. You can, oh, I'm sorry to hear that or whatever. Like, you sure you didn't create that situation yourself? You sure you're not responsible for the result that you created? So it's a lot of times it's the lack of self-responsibility and self-determination. So that's my soapbox. So let's talk about something more fun.
These are the kind of conversations that'll get us kicked off iTunes, right?
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's hard, and I've had lots of men's groups that I've met with, and we've talked about these issues, and it's very difficult because I am in that camp. I'm here. I'm a young man trying to pave my way, trying to lead my family, trying to start a business, trying to work on my body, trying to do all these types of things. I feel the same kind of toxic urges that every other man in power or whatever feels, and it's going to take understanding those and being able to control them. And, there's lots of, like I'm a Christian, there's lots of scripture that grabs onto me and shows me what that kind of box of healthy placement is. And there's lots of other secular thinkers that are kind of in this same camp. But I think first you got to be able to recognize what it means to be a young man, what it means to be a man in general, and how we can look at that and study that and learn how to be a gentleman. And I think that's kind of, it's really a more complex science than people give it credit for. And you can't tell me what that means, because that's really a piece of life. It's just so much, there's so much to this conversation, and it's being silenced a lot, and it's become politicized. And I don't know why. This isn't political. This is biological and social. And I think we should be able to have these conversations.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the art of conversation is becoming a lost skill.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not too far away from a lot of the tin hat wearers, I guess. But I'm just a student of life, looking at these different events unfold around us and trying to navigate throughout the world using the reason that I have. And I think that's the best way to look at things is be reasonable, use science, use these different tools that we have at our disposal to be able to kind of decipher what's happening, and not be a gullible fool.
Yeah. And I think also, there's a thing people talk about science. Science is not a set of defined principles. And by that, I mean, scientists really disagree with each other on shit.
Yeah.
If you want to see people get pissed off and petty and angry, you go to a scientific meeting where really, really smart people with really, really big egos have very, very different ideas, and they'll be yelling at each other. So science is not like the end all. There's no like one true scientific answer.
It's not truth. I got in a discussion with this earlier because so I'm a systems engineer. So a lot of parts of my job involve experimental design. Tools that are there for scientists to use. And when people say, trust science, it's like, well, what science is the ability to use the scientific method, which is just a process for testing systematic results until you get a somewhat reliable outcome with your hypothesis, and then formulating an opinion or a fact off of that. That's the idea of scientific method. And that's really more or less the field of science. But listening to a scientist is not science. That's listening to a scientist's opinion, who you're presuming is referencing different studies that used this scientific method. And the scientific method is just testing a single hypothesis systematically. It's not defining reality per se. It's just, and so there's all this that goes into this conversation as we worship this idea of science. But it's like, I know how stats work. A lot of times statistics can become very skewed, and you got to dig into these studies yourself. And you can't just listen to a journalist that interpreted the abstract of a scientific study and decided this is now science. That's not necessarily true. I could read through lots of studies right now and I say, I disagree. This study's kind of rubbish because of X, Y, and Z of how they did their analysis. But people are they're listening to just the narrative. And I think that's something important that people should look at when they listen to science. That's what science is that you should do.
When I was a long time ago, when I was an undergraduate, I loved statistics. And there was a book that we had to learn, or it was a chapter or book, I can't remember, but it was a lying with statistics. And it was really interesting. It was about how you can misrepresent data, and especially like you think about a graph with the X and Y axis. And first of all, most graphs should be starting at zero at the very beginning, because that's kind of like they're supposed to, so you see what happens over time.
Yep.
But the other thing is that if you extend one of the axes, the X or the Y, disproportionately, and I can't remember, there was a proportion that was supposed to be between the two, you can really make it look like something is a slow rise or a fast rise just by distorting the length of the axes.
Yeah, and just cropping the graph.
Yeah, and so you can really distort the appearance, the visual appearance of a graph to give you a misleading concept.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I remember when I was taking my first undergraduate statistics class, it was the same thing. It was, we actually read real studies from medical journals, from psychology journals, from lots of different areas. And our professor laid them out in front of us, and we analyzed them and found all sorts of issues with real professionally published peer-reviewed studies from medical associations, American Psychology Association. And we're just like, wait a minute, what? Here we are, undergrad students, looking at the statistics used in these, and these are being published in journals. And the whole point is, it's not that obvious. This is not that obvious. You've got to really dissect a lot of this stuff if you really want to get to the source of truth in most things. So we just take shortcuts in our mind and we say, well, I'm going to appeal to authority, and I'm just going to listen to this person that has an opinion that I'm assuming has done the hard part of analyzing all that. And that's what we do. And now we're calling that science. It's like, no, you're listening to a guy that you're hoping did the hard part. Yeah. So it's a fun study in the philosophy of epistemology, and it's not obvious. Empiricism has led us wrong many a times in lots of ways. And that was the idea of the humanities. Was there some stuff you just won't even be able to scientifically test? And that's kind of the idea of art and meaning and philosophy and theology and all the good stuff. But anyway, we digress. Well, Mr. Orest, can you give me just a couple, what is one of the weirder things you've run into just kind of in this second wind of life? Is there a weird business or a weird, interesting, thing you've bumped into that you thought would be I wish I would have known this when I was 29?
God, I can't even remember 29. I just think that I find it sad. It's not weird. I find it sad, and because we talked about this, and how often people have given up on their life, and about their ability to create the life that they want, and so they just kind of just slide through. And we, like my wife and I, are very active. And this is not to say it's every day we're like this or whatever, because we've had our ups and downs in terms of being on the path and not being on the path, and that's especially now, if it's all it's harder, but we very actively work to being better than what we were, and that includes being better individually. That includes being better as a couple.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you focus on that, there's all sorts of things that in all areas of your life that you can do, both from the emotional, the spiritual, the physical. All of those things are important for you in your life, especially as a couple. Especially as a couple, I think those are very, very important aspects of your life.
I agree. And that's part of the reason why I started the show. It was not only for my own self-interest to learn from people like you and others of how I can continue to improve or implement things in my business or in my personal life, but to share that journey with other people and encourage them to get out there and improve. And here we are, 12 days after the new year. And it's usually the one time a year someone thinks about how can I improve what my situation is. And they never think about it any other times. And, I don't know if it's just the competitive nature in me. I don't know if I have naturally high testosterone. I don't know, but it's this, there's a drive within my soul that just makes me want to continue to improve, continue to grow, continue to contribute, because it's just I don't want to end this life. You ever get done with I was an athlete in college. You ever get done with a sport and you knew that you could have played harder, you knew you didn't leave it all in the field, was one of the most disappointing things that I could have ever gone through. But so I don't want the end of my life to be I left something on the table. I could have done more. I could have made more of this. I could have done this. I could have helped this person. I could have done something where I want to leave it all on the field. And I would look at my life that same way. And I don't see why other people should go around the world, and think about their life as just reacting to circumstances. No, you can control this in a lot of different ways. There's certain things out of your control, but there's a lot of things within your control. And where you take your life is one of those things.
Yeah, I think I mentioned I'm in a group, and in mid-December, we had a 3-day intense, 8 hours each day, annual planning session for ourselves. and it covered basically physical, financial, spiritual, and business. And it was basically the first day was figuring out where you are, which sometimes is unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
A very honest assessment, and then there's a whole series of questions and the exercises that we went through, and then the next day was about setting what you'd call like impossible goals, and we're for the where you want to be by January 1st, 2022.
Yep.
And then setting up quarterly benchmarks to get to that. And then my week starts off on Sundays where I sit down and I look at that stuff, review that, and then plan out my week based on what I want to achieve. So my days are there's a lot of purpose to my days. There are some days that I wish there wasn't that much. There's some days I wish I could be a slug, and every once in a while every once in a while I do pick a day to be slug, where I fall down on the whole thing. But it's not a permanent. It's not the fallback position. It's the being the slug is actually an active choice. It's like, okay, we are taking today off completely. We're not doing anything productive. We are taking, and it usually ends up like we do something productive for about 2 hours and then take the rest of the day off.
Those are the best, though. Those are the best days.
Yeah. But I think having a purpose to your life is really important. And it's as you get older, if you lose that, you are missing out on something in your life. Now, maybe some people, that's just all they want to do. They just want to chill out. But I don't see them as being really particularly happy.
Right. Yeah. I think I've seen and I've read on Tony Robbins where he talks about a lot of that kind of recipe of happiness. And one of the things he always talks about is it's the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. And it's a recipe in a lot of ways that achieving something, having goals, having benchmarks, accomplishment is kind of what we're meant to do in a lot of ways. And you're not going to be able to feel 100% fulfilled until you have that ability to achieve milestones. But then people go the opposite way. Some people are just so fixated on achievement, they don't recognize the small things. They can't stop and smell the roses and feel that gratitude and actually enjoy that moment. And that's why he calls it the art of fulfillment. But the idea of achievement is life isn't like this hedonistic venture of just max outing all of your pleasures. In a lot of ways, you need the pain to feel the pleasure. And I think that's kind of this idea of achievement in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you need to contrast. There's no doubt about it.
100%. Well, Orest, this was an outstanding episode. I really appreciate you talking all sorts of things related to something I've actually been studying quite intensely this last year, and I intend to continue that, is just what does it mean to be a man, right? And I think that this was a fantastic discussion that really scratched the surface on a very complex, growing issue in our society. And it's encouraging for me to see other men, kind of vocalizing their opinions in this space and sharing different tools and strategies that you've used. So I appreciate you jumping on the show today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Where can our listeners kind of find you or work with you or kind of engage with anything you have going on?
2 places, actually 3 places. You can go to Old Guy Talks, plural talks, .com, and that's where I have my blog. We're in the middle of redoing it completely, so it's going to have some patience if you go there right away. My podcast is Old Guy Talks to Me. That comes out weekly, and that's where I interview experts on stuff that are, a lot of times it's out of self-interest for myself.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned, but I go from anywhere from anti-aging medicine to testosterone to erectile dysfunction to menopause, sex, relationships, porn addiction. We cover all the stuff and go places where people generally are too embarrassed to go. So you can listen to this in the privacy of your home and not be embarrassed. And then the other thing, you can I shoot a little vignette every day, about 2 to 3 minutes. But if you go to my YouTube channel, Old Guy Talks to Me Daily. And sometimes I talk pretty serious stuff, and sometimes I complain that the ice cube was too big for my Scotch glass, and
That's a first world problem if I've ever heard.
That is. Sometimes I did for a while there. I did a good number of first world problems. Yeah, it was actually I was in New Zealand with my daughter, and I was having a Scotch, and the ice cube, one of those big spheres, there's a sphere, the round ice cubes.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was too big for the glass, and it was fortunately he was able to handle that emergency quickly. The bartender was very astute and able to intercede right away when he saw what happened.
Absolutely. You need the bat phone for that. I mean, that's a real serious. Yeah, I know a couple of the old school things, like the bat phone, the red bat phone. I get you.
There we go.
Oh my gosh. Well, Orest, thank you so much for coming on today. You guys are listening to Winners, Wallets, and World Views podcast winners. We feature people crushing it in life, wallets, world. We talk about finance, real estate, money, small business, entrepreneurship, and worldviews. We talk about different things going on in the world and perspectives that might be able to shift your mindset and help you through whatever you might be going through. You can listen to this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. We're everywhere. iHeartRadio. And I just encourage you, if you enjoyed this episode today, share it with a friend, leave a 5-star review and a comment. It really means a lot to us to see this continue to circulate. Thank you so much, everybody. Once again, go be somebody.